In a landmark ruling that has sent shockwaves through the financial world, a federal court has sided with a group of borrowers in a closely watched case against a major bank. The decision, which came late last week, has been hailed as a major victory for consumer rights advocates and could have far-reaching consequences for the banking industry. While the specific details of the case remain confidential, the court's findings have ignited a debate about the balance of power between lenders and borrowers. The case centered around allegations of predatory lending practices by the bank, which is accused of targeting vulnerable borrowers with high-interest loans. Borrowers claimed the bank failed to adequately disclose the terms of these loans and engaged in deceptive marketing tactics. The court's decision to rule in favor of the borrowers suggests that these allegations were found to be credible. This ruling comes at a time when the relationship between banks and their customers is under increasing scrutiny. In recent years, there has been growing public anger over what many see as unfair and predatory lending practices by banks, particularly in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. This latest ruling is likely to fuel those concerns and could lead to further calls for stricter regulation of the banking industry. The borrowers, a diverse group of individuals and families, argued that they were misled by the bank's marketing materials and pressured into taking out loans they could not afford. They claimed that the bank failed to properly explain the terms of the loans, particularly the high interest rates and fees that would accrue over time. Many borrowers, already struggling financially, found themselves trapped in a cycle of debt that they could not escape. Lawyers for the borrowers presented evidence suggesting that the bank had deliberately targeted vulnerable individuals and communities with these loans. They argued that the bank's actions were not only unethical but also illegal, violating consumer protection laws designed to prevent predatory lending practices. The borrowers' stories, filled with tales of financial hardship and despair, resonated with the court. The court's decision to hear this case was significant in itself. Many similar cases in the past have been dismissed or settled out of court, leaving the larger issue of predatory lending largely unaddressed. By allowing this case to proceed to trial, the court signaled its willingness to hold banks accountable for their lending practices. The bank, a major financial institution with branches across the country, vehemently denied the allegations. They argued that all loans were made in accordance with applicable laws and regulations, and that borrowers were fully informed of the terms and conditions before entering into any loan agreements. The bank maintained that it had acted in good faith throughout its dealings with the borrowers. The bank's legal team argued that the borrowers had simply made poor financial decisions and were now attempting to evade responsibility for their debts. They pointed to the fact that all borrowers had signed legally binding contracts and had not raised any concerns at the time the loans were issued. The bank's defense rested on the principle of individual accountability and the sanctity of contracts. The bank also emphasized its role in the community, highlighting its support for local businesses and charitable causes. They argued that a ruling against the bank would have negative repercussions for the entire financial system, potentially leading to tighter lending standards and reduced access to credit for borrowers. Despite their arguments, the court remained unconvinced. The court's decision to side with the borrowers has sent shockwaves through the banking industry. The ruling, which is expected to be appealed, could have significant implications for how banks interact with borrowers in the future. It also sets a precedent for other potential lawsuits from borrowers who believe they were victims of predatory lending practices. The court ordered the bank to pay substantial damages to the borrowers, including compensation for financial losses and emotional distress. The bank has also been ordered to reform its lending practices to ensure future compliance with consumer protection laws. This ruling serves as a stark reminder that banks are not above the law and must be held accountable for their actions. The long-term effects of this ruling remain to be seen. However, it is clear that this case represents a turning point in the fight against predatory lending. The court's decision has empowered borrowers and sent a clear message to the banking industry that exploiting vulnerable individuals will not be tolerated. It is likely that this case will inspire further legal challenges, potentially leading to greater protections for borrowers and a more equitable financial system.